Hello Stampers and welcome to Laura's Stamp Pad. Today I want to show you a little tutorial on this fabulous card here. So this was my inspiration card. I got this from a fellow stamper, Mary Ellen. She is fabulous. You can check her out at createwithme.com. And she created this card and I just loved it. I don't know, there's something about the watercolor or the splotches of colors or just the hashtag love you or what it is, but I fell in love with this card. So I had to recreate it. Also, she has a little bit of bling on there that I super love. Mine, I went a little bit more punk rocker, I think. So mine says hashtag you rock. And I think it would be great for a teen or tween card or just about a card for anyone. So I'm going to show you how I created this card today. I'm going to use some different colors than I used in this sample because I always like to kind of see what I can come up with. So let's go ahead and put these aside and we'll bring in our watercolor paper. So I'm using a piece of watercolor paper measuring 3 inches by 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. And I'm going to be using my Aqua Painter for this. So I'm going to start out by just squeezing the Aqua Painter just a bit, like not a lot, just a bit to get some water down in there. And I'm just going to lightly go over my entire piece of watercolor paper, just to get a nice little shine to the paper. And you might have to squeeze just a little bit since you're moving kind of fast, so then it's not coming out as quickly as it, it needs to come out quicker than whenever you're just lightly painting. So you can see there's just a little shine. I mean, it's not dripping, there's no water coming off of it, but it is wet enough for it to start to curl just a little bit, which is exactly what I want. I just want just an all over, just a little bit of wetness. Now I'm going to bring in my colors. I am using Old Olive, Cucumber Crush, Bermuda Bay, and Pacific Point. And I'm actually just going to use my clear blocks as my little color palette. So I'm just going to stamp them a little bit in there and a little bit in. So now I have my 2 greens. And I'm just going to pick up the green and just kind of start swishing. And you can do as little or as much water as you, color as you want. And I'm not squeezing the pen at all. So then once you have your first color down, then you can just swish it off until you have it run clean and then pick up your next color. And you'll see I'm not really squishing the pen at all, and I'm just kind of going back and forth with my color, and I like a nice bold bright color, so I like to keep going back for more. And then you have your green, and I guess maybe I should go a little farther since I'm only using 4 colors this time. And then now I'll do my 2 blues. So again, I'm just gonna stamp the clear block into the ink pad to pick up some color to use as my color palette. Ooh, I love the way it's bleeding between Cucumber Crush and Bermuda Bay. Super fabulous. I can see it's starting to pool a little bit over here, and that's okay. And I'm just holding on to my cardstock so that it's, 1, it doesn't get away from me, and 2, so that it cannot be curling as much. Another great tip is to take painter's tape and just add a layer of painter's tape across the top and bottom, since we won't actually be coloring all the way to the edge. Then that would work perfectly. If you are coloring all the way to the edge, then just make sure your painter's tape maybe has like a nice perfect border around it, and then you'll have that nice white look, which will be super fabulous. And then if you didn't like that white look at the end, you could always cut off that little piece. So now we're going to move to our Pacific Point and finish this off. And you'll see that the reason why I color it in the water in the very beginning is because it bleeds so much nicer, because it already has that wet look, and instead the water doesn't just kind of like run over top of it, or the ink run over top of it. It starts to soak in a lot quicker. Now I feel like I need to go back and do a little bit more of that first color, even though I have a whole bunch here, so I might just move this around a little bit more, make it bleed into that. And you can always kind of play with it a little bit if you want it to bleed more. If you want, like right on the second color, I have more color down here, so if I wanted more over here, I could just, kind of come back through and add a little bit of color in there. With watercoloring, I find I usually do too much and then it becomes a hot mess, so I should probably stop right there. But look how beautiful that is with those shades of blue and everything. So gorgeous, and it'll be a great man card too, which I struggle with those. So now you're going to want to let this set aside so that it can dry completely. You could always speed that up with a heat tool, so you can always use your heat tool on that. I have one that I have already done, and that's this one here. And you'll see that I did use the same colors that I used in that original sample, which was this one here. Actually, I didn't use the blue on it, but otherwise I did go across with the 5 colors. I just didn't use that 6th color. So with this one, you can see that, like, you know, the colors bled and smeared together and everything, but once it dries, it just looks amazing, and you never know how it's going to come out. No two will come out exactly the same. So now we're going to take our VersaMark, and we're going to want to make sure that our VersaMark is nice and inked up and juicy, because you want to make sure that you have a nice strong image on this watercolor paper. Since the watercolor paper is textured, then you want to make sure that you get a nice strong image with your letters whenever you're heat embossing. So I'm just going to take my clear block, and I'm using the Layered Letters Alphabet Stamp Set, which is super fabulous. I love using these items too, but it already has your little hashtag or pound sign. So it has that, and then I just picked out the letters for You Rock. And I find that the best way to do this is to actually lay down all of my letters. So I'm just going to spell out You Rock and make sure that they're all nice and lined up perfectly. And then I'm going to flip my block over and press it down, and then that picks up all of those images there nice and perfectly. So I'm just going to ink this up with the VersaMark, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do it upside down to make sure I get that nice even coverage. And my hands are little, and sometimes those slip out of my hand. So now I have that nice even coverage, and I'm just going to press it down onto my image there. And then with this one, I also thought I would go with silver rather than black. So I'm just going to take some of my silver embossing powder and pour it right over top. And then we'll just tap off the excess. So now you can see how that silver is in there. And now we'll use a heat tool to set it. And remember, with your heat tool, you actually will use number 2, the number 2 setting, and you don't need to sit there and go like this. You actually should just start on one corner and hold until it starts to crawl across and melt, and you'll start to see it become a glistening silver, and it'll crawl across and melt as it goes along. So as it moves along, just keep moving it around. You don't need to go like this, or otherwise you're actually cooling it off more. You know, you're not actually hitting one point and melting it, you're just lightly hitting all points. So the best is to just kind of start in one corner, and as you start to see it crawl, start moving across, just like that. So now you'll see it start to crawl across. See what I mean? How it gets shiny and starts to crawl across. Keep moving along until it's all complete. Isn't that absolutely stunning? I love that. So shiny and fabulous. Super, super fabulous. I am loving it. So now I'm actually just going to mount that on a piece of black cardstock. And this black cardstock just layers perfectly on there. I usually use a fast fuse or a stronger adhesive whenever I'm using watercolor paper. Because it curls like that, I want to make sure I have a nice strong adhesive to hold that curl and to fight back against that, you know, like that. So, and then I just mounted that on a card base of Cucumber Crush. So here is the original sample. See how fabulous that is? And I love how that black really makes that pop. But I think the black will super make this pop as well because of that silver. So it will look just like that. Love, love, love it. So let's bring back in all of our samples. And then the original sample that I loved the idea on. And then, of course, I will be making this one into a card and posting pictures of that on my blog, laurastamppad.com, as well as pictures of these samples too, so be sure to check that out. I'll leave a link down below. And until next time, happy stamping. Bye-bye.